Hello. It's Prince Easy, and well, I have a pink paper here, and today we are gonna primarily focus on Syria, right, and what has been happening on Syria, right. I haven't talked about Syria for a long time. Okay, so let's try to catch up what happened since then. And of course, the whole point of this video is to challenge the alternative media and, like I've said, their role in this whole affair, right? It seems that all I am receiving and all I am saying is mostly negative rhetoric coming out of their mouth, right? So I would like to challenge many other personalities out there, right? And is this a genuine challenge, right? Because we all want the same thing, right? We want the people of Syria to have peace that was taken away from them, right? But the majority of the people that I see that seems to be stuck in the whole cult of personality, right? They do not approve of the new head of the Syrian people. They do not approve because of his past, right? And in the first two videos, if I'm not mistaken, that I talked about this, I think I tried to talk about it shortly, right? Because I don't really know much about his past, right? And all I said and what was important, I think, up to now is that we make do with what we have. That's what we do. That's the best we can do. We salvage a situation to our benefit. And that's exactly what I did, right? I acknowledged how he came into power, that he was, I don't know, handed over the power or whatever it seems, or whatever ensued, right? Whatever was, right? Assad is no longer the leader of those peoples, right? That is just a fact that we have to acknowledge right now, okay? And most importantly, we have to acknowledge the power of this person, regardless of how we feel, right? Most of us anyway, I don't feel any type of way about it. Like I said, I'm trying to make best of a worse situation, okay? which is, we can both agree on that, I guess, right? So I saw a video from George Golaway, right? He has a channel on YouTube, right? And we see eye to eye on most things, right? But when it comes to Syria, right, his latest video that I saw was titled something about the mistake, the biggest mistake of the British, right? So, and again, he didn't really focus on the involvement of his government. He only touched upon the 15 million or so that was given to the Syrian people, right? And I say that was only a move against Russia, right? It was probably Russia's money that they gave away, right? So they did that to spite Russia. This, yes, and we saw them recently, quote unquote, endorse the Gaza plan by Egypt, right? We know that they did that to spite America. They did that to spite Trump. Now, there's a saying, right, in Africa, where grasshoppers fight, the crows cheer, right? Because in order for one grasshopper to win, one has to be eliminated and the other has to be injured. The crow, either way, is going to get his food, right? And I think this is the problem of the West mostly, right? That when it comes to viewing other nations that have multiple religious groups, right? The tolerance that needs to exist, right? The type of understanding, right? Even unspoken type of understanding that needs to exist between these groups. It's a very complex dynamic. Okay, it's a very complex dynamic that has to be established. Okay, it doesn't make it easier for states. Let's just say that. So they try, right, to reconcile and to put the nations together, right, because their intention is to keep the nation running. Okay, so I think, like I've said up to now, is that we should move past our views, right? Most of you that I watch here on YouTube and I receive information from are former or ex-military, right? You are literally part of the apparatus of the devil, and yet here you are trying to change, right, and not let your past determine your future. And I think we should give that person the same benefit of the doubt, right? I think it's only fair, right? I think it's only fair. Okay, and that's exactly what I did. Okay, so after the coup, I gave my opinions. You can re-watch those 2 videos. I cannot recount their titles or whatnot, right? I have more than 200 videos in this channel, apparently. Right? So I chose to work with what I have, right? For the sake of the flock, most importantly. This is not about the HTS or the leader of the HTS, which most of you apparently do not prefer, right? I cannot move like that. I cannot have that same opinion. That would mean abandoning the people of Syria, right? He's the official head, regardless if we like it or not, right? Regardless if you like it or not. I feel nothing about it, right? I feel nothing about it. If he has his sins, he will face his maker. I'm not his maker, right? I wasn't there when he was doing all of these things. Apparently there are videos out there. There's a lot that has been said. Okay, let's just focus, right? So there are 2 groups. There are people like me, and then there are people that they just want completely throw out the baby and the bathwater when it comes to Syria because of the head of the nation, right? So I had a couple of requests for the new Syrian regime, right? You can look up the videos, I made them, right? They are literally in this channel, right? And they were somewhere last year, if I'm not mistaken. If not last year, then the beginning of this year, right? Like I said, I cannot recall. Okay, but in that video, I remember specific requests that I made, right? And one of them was to put together all the religions, right? To put together all the religions because of the devices of the evil one, right? To put together all the people of the religions and reconcile and settle their differences, right? That was done, right? I remember I had the pictures of him with the Christians and the Orthodox and the Muslims. That was done, right? And then I also talked about rebuilding their police force, right? That they did with the help of their brethren, right? The Arab League, they did that, right? And they even came out here and they said that they were doing it under Islamic law, and it was heavily criticized by the people who do not really understand how everything works in a multi-religious environment, especially when you have a Muslim majority, right? A Muslim majority. I understand that because here in Tanzania, where it is a union between 2 nations, right? Zanzibar and Tanzania and Tanganyika, right? To form Tanzania, and we are split like in half, you know. of course, Muslims and Christians, yeah, and this affects our political system, right? How we elect presidents, for instance, right? We have a Christian president, then the vice would be Muslim. If the president is Muslim, then the vice president is. These are the compromises that I'm talking about, right? Or even when it comes to meat, right? The whole thing about slaughtering. Right? Would you rather have Christian have their own slaughterhouses and Muslim have their own slaughterhouses, or it's a whole situation, right? And we'd rather not get into it, right? But our early leaders knew and built a proper foundation, so as we do not have these small issues, right? We do have issues, let me not say that, right? For instance, the big one is about divorce, right, and interreligious marriages, right, when it comes to divorce, because the faith of Christians and the faith of the Muslims differ, right? So something had to be reconciled, and this is a process. This is not just a thing that happens like that, right? Especially in the, I don't know, multi-religious Middle Eastern zone, so they call it, okay? So the police force was another request that was done, right? And of course, I talked about the armed groups and how they need to sit down with these armed groups and find a compromise, right? Find a compromise, do not have a power struggle, right? Find a compromise, right? A way that people can be secure. It's not about the leaders, right? People, it's about the victims of when the two fight. So I was watching the progress, right? I saw Turkey come into play, I saw Iraq come into play, right? And within Syria itself, right? Some groups lay down their arms, right? Some groups which were fighting proxy wars within Syria stopped their aggression, right? Sorry, I'm dealing with mosquitoes here. Right? Stopped their aggression, okay? And for better or for worse, in my book, that is a good thing, okay? That is a good thing, that brother and brother should stop shedding each other's blood, right? So the Kurds were on the leash by the Turkeys, by the Turkish government, right? And the Iraqis pulled back, right? And I think I made a video about them, right? So I'm glad that happened, right? And of course they're rebuilding, right? All of these groups that came in to help rebuild the economy of Syria, okay? That is all and well. I even talked about the Belt and Road Initiative by China, right? But again, China has to be sure that the investment will not be stagnated by conflict, right? China is like that, very cautious about the safety of its people, right? It tries its best, okay? And we have seen over there in these Arab nations where these Chinese people had projects and they suffered casualties, okay? And that is not it's not good, right? So any responsible government should be sure that this country is safe so as their people can go there and work, right? But there's a problem, right? There's a problem that encompasses the hypocrisy of everything, right? And that is the role, right, of the nations, of the Zionists, right? I would like to tell you a story, right? This story is going to be really, really familiar, right? It's an old story, but it's going to resonate because the same perpetrators of this story are the same perpetrators of these things that are happening now to the world, right? So we used to have powerful, even down south in Tanzania, in Tanganyika back then, we had really powerful tribes and kingdoms, right, that the Europeans could not take head on, right? It was a challenge, it was a problem. So what they did was they gathered small tribes, right, that were weaker, and the most favored were the ones that had some form of animosity against the bigger tribe, right, because it was a thing that they conquered and subdued them and absorbed them into their kingdoms, right? So it went. So, and these small kingdoms were then given arms to the teeth, right, so as they can attack together, right, together, the Europeans and the locals, to attack this big, in the hopes that at the end of the road that the weaker tribe will have some form of rulership or power or say when it's all said and done, right? But they were bamboozled. They were bamboozled. That was a lie. Okay, they were just being used. They didn't know that they were creating a loophole for them to use in the future, right? They cannot make bullets, right? So they have to, like I said, be subservient to the person that provides them their safety, right? In terms of bullets and even more dangerous technology to fend off any party that would like to have revenge, for instance, for what they did in collaboration with the Europeans, right? So that is a really simple story, right? It's a reoccurring story. It goes over and over, over and over, over and over. It happens, right? It's a real story, right? Some of you might even be familiar with it, right? I don't know, people in the AES, people in the Congo, I don't know, people in the Middle East, maybe in Ukraine, maybe in Taiwan, right? Right? It's the same story playing over and over, and it's even the same thing with Syria, right? So George and other brethren that think alike, you have a problem, right? You have a problem, because recently Mr. Netanyahu thought it was, I don't know, humane of him to come out here and threaten the people of Syria if they do not, I don't know, provide security, right? And this provision of security involves the forces of the nation leaving them alone and leaving that land under Zionist occupation, right? I didn't hear you say nothing about that, right? But that tragically fell on its face. Why? Because the leaders of this religious sect, right, a minority religious sect, came out and rebuked the Zionist state for saying that they said that we do not want the protection of Israel, right, because they knew that they would be used as a springboard to launch a proxy war inside Syria under the support of the Zionist state to destabilize Syria, right? Recently also in Iran, they found stashes of weapons, many weapons, stashes in houses, right? So it's the same maneuver, it's the same colonial technique, right? But since it wasn't applied on you, the Westerners, you will never understand, right? And for you who are pointing fingers to China and Russia for being, I don't know, a quote-unquote totalitarian government, for crying out loud, I hope they're totalitarian. From the aggressions that you have been pushing against the Russians, okay, not the Soviet Union, okay, because these two are two different things, right? But it's about the movies, right? Coming back to how art affects reality, right? In the movies we see over and over that there's a correlation being made that the Soviets were Russian. And that's what people took, and that's what people be thinking, but it's not true, right? So the aggression against the Russian people has changed the dynamic of their politics because they know your techniques, right? We see your techniques even today, right? When you call for a democratic election and somebody inconvenient, or rather a person who disagrees with how you do things, right? Yojesko, right? Yojesko, right? Where they just cancel elections and do all of this drama, right? Because a person who does not, who is not convenient, right? And that's what they tried to do in Russia, right? And that's what they did in that land when it was the Soviet Union, right? They put their own people who agree with them, for the exploitation of the people of Russia, and that is unacceptable, right? So you have to deal with your inconvenient leaders, right? Because that's what it is, an inconvenience, same as Macron, an inconvenience to the world, an unfortunate time in history. That's what these pages are. It's the same thing, it's the same situation that the Syrian people are, right? From your perspective, they have to make do with whatever situation they have. Starmer, no matter how we don't like him, he's the prime minister, right? Right? Now we can do all of these things to combat their agenda, right? But what cannot be denied is that that person is a prime minister, unless somebody else takes their position. How? We know how. You're a politician, you know this, right? Or some Americans deal with their president and what decisions he's making, right? Or for that case, the Palestinian government, right? The so-called elected officials, and their causing up and their compliance to every demand the Israelis place on them. So it's a whole situation that we have here. Okay, and all of these countries that I mentioned, even in the IAS, right, there's aggression from the south, from the north, a country in the north from the AES states, saying that, oh, there's a specific tiny minority of people that you are oppressing, that you need to stop oppressing and give them their freedom, and they even want their own nation. So they want to carve up a nation of the Sahel states, alliance of the Sahel states, so as to make their own state. And they are actively arming these groups and protecting the fighters of this regime that wants to carve up the nations of the Sahel. Now, is that acceptable? It's the same, I've told you that it's the same thing over and over. It's the same thing over and over, right? In the Congo, it's the same thing. They take a minority tribe, they convince them that you're oppressed, you need to fight for freedom, you need to fight for your own land, and this and that. Boom, now they give them weapons, and boom, here we are. I can go on and on. A tiny nation like Ukraine should never, ever have went to war with Russia. Ever. But again, proxies, like Rubio said. The same thing as Taiwan. Can Taiwan take on China? Are you freaking serious? The numbers do not add up in any form of military simulations. The numbers do not add up. So they are trying to destroy Taiwan. The same thing with the tiny nation of Israel, these Zionists. Literally. Okay, so let's talk about the recent minority attack, right? The minority attack, because that's the phrasing that is going on. So let's see what happened. So in the night, the forces, the security forces of the nation were on patrol, right? And this minority group ambushed this patrol group executed some, and some, I don't know, ran away or they were disarmed. Basically, they took the arms of these peoples. Okay, now you tell me, in which nation was a appropriate response different, right? Would the response be different from what HTS has done, right? Kids are playing here. Pole. Aya, tokeni hapo. Go. Nenda. So I think that was an appropriate response, right? Because these people are empowered by the Zionists. They are empowered by the Zionists. And the Arab League knows it. They know it, right? Like I've said, you can literally look up on the internet Bibi's last speech pertaining to Syria. He was literally gaslighting for war, right? Like you said in your video, George Galloway, they have 1/3 of the nation under their control. Is that acceptable? Okay, now I have told you what I have done to help stabilize the situation, right? Just like I've done for the Palestinian people. Tried, right? With limited success because the aggression is still persistent, right? And your government, the UK government, the American government, the French government, the German government is supporting the murder of these people. You need to be upset more with your leaders than with the leaders of HTS. HTS would have never ever happened if you did not endorse the placement of the Zionist state within Palestine. That is the root of the problem. And that is the truth that you do not want to admit, because that would need you to check up your own closet and to clean it up. Just imagine cleaning up the United States from the influence of the Zionists. Just imagine that. You think the Syrians are in a bad situation? You're in a worse situation, brother. You are the catalyst for all of this chaos. Your peoples, the elected officials, are the catalyst of the problems that we see in the Middle East. With your support, they empower the chaos. In every of these tiny nations that I've mentioned here, your governments have hand in it. What are you going to do about that? You, as a MP, member of parliament, a powerful member of parliament, so to say. Okay? We cannot play the hypocrisy games anymore. What happens in Syria is a serious business. It's serious business. It's none of your business. They are not there to suit your preferences. Neither mine. Okay? Neither mine. So you have to ask yourself then, this most important question as I'm summing this up. Does your rhetoric help the Syrian people or make the situation in Syria much worse? Okay? That is the question that I have for you. So let me not add anything to it. Right? I think I've covered the basis on my pink slip here. So yeah, let me put a pun in it right there. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.